This is the beginning of what will end up being like a series of different teachings, lectures, discussions, all coming out of the Safe Centre. Okay, so this is the first one, the first series. We're going to be talking about conversations over the next 3 weeks. So this week we're going to be talking about what do we need to feel safe enough to have hard conversations. In the second week, we're going to be talking about, can I know God's absolute truth? And when I know it, should I tell you? And week 3, how to win a conversation. All right. Now, most of the time there'll be you guys talking together in groups, working it out. Yeah. So maybe just take a moment and everyone tell each other names or smile at each other so you can like be happy to have a conversation. Oh, say hello to the people on your table. On your table, do you see your post-it notes? If you have questions and we don't doesn't come up while we're talking, you can write your questions down and leave them either stuck on your table or you can give them to me afterwards, okay? I was kind of thinking like questions about what we're talking about, but I know you lot, so you can write where the questions you like. So, just so you know, this teaching series, I think most of you do know, has been taken from my PhD, which was called Diabolical Dialogue. So dialogue is when you have a two-way conversation, yeah? When you're talking, that's what the word dialogue is. Because sometimes our conversations all go wrong, yeah? And there are some times where there are some topics that's just best to avoid. I remember the first time I took Daniel to meet my grandparents, and as we walked in the house, we went, oh, look, whatever you do, Daniel, do not talk to my granddad about religion, politics, or the royal family. And Daniel took that as a challenge, and he sat and he made one statement that included all 3 of those topics. And my granddad exploded in his chair and went off for like goodness knows how long on this like monologue of his opinions. Have you got subjects in your families that you just don't talk about? Yeah? Oh no, I'm the only one with a family like that. But don't we? We have these conversations that we just can't talk to one another, and the ones that's just best to avoid. Unsafe conversations, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. What makes a conversation unsafe? More importantly, what do we need for it to be safe? But sometimes it's not just that the conversation, the topic itself is difficult to talk about. It's a lot of it starts in a place of miscommunication, doesn't it? I want you to have a look. Actually, sorry, Stephen, can I get you to do that for me? I've got a sketch for you to watch from the UK. Let me just get the lights for you. On miscommunication. Right. Here's the thing, it's all about context, isn't it? And it's about the assumptions that we make with our words. We think we're speaking English to one another when we're really not. Yeah? People have to guess what we mean and what we think. And here's the thing on that one, that last joke I didn't get because it's to do with that word Bill Hooks rhyming with a rude word that I don't use. So I didn't get the joke at the end, although I found the rest of it quite funny. Because I didn't know the context, yeah? This is what we're like all the time when we're talking to one another. Researchers have said that it's an absolute, people who do a lot of study on how we speak to one another, have said it's an absolute miracle that we can actually communicate at all. Because we have to make so many assumptions about what someone's saying. So let me give you an example, right? This is like the classic one. Someone comes in, they say, the gate's open. And the hearer has to work out from that statement what they mean. Okay? So the gate's open, so who's in visiting and has left the gate open? Nice thing. Or the gate's open, why didn't you shut it? Yes? It's the whole time it's up to the hearer to try and work out what the third person is speaking about. There's this assumption that we not understand what each other is saying despite the words we're using. But I think one of the greatest assumptions that we make is the way that we structure language. We do it in such a way to make it so that you agree with what I'm saying, all right? We start from that space. So think about this. How many arguments have you had with people where you have said, but what you actually said was? So, the gate's open. 5 minutes later, the gate is still open. I told you the gate was open. Why didn't you shut it? Yeah? You didn't ask me to shut the gate. What you actually said was, the gate is open. Yeah? Just FYI, this is how a certain person argues. Just giving you a heads up. Want to know how to argue? Make sure you get your words right. So these assumptions that we make, this is our space for our miscommunication and our frustration and our anger. All right? We agree that everyone, the thing that we are saying is the thing that the person agrees with. Make that assumption. Let me give you an example. I was in the UK and I was at a leadership conference, right? And I was teaching a seminar like this. And at the end of the session, I went up to speak to the man who was doing the teaching. And he was standing there, when him and I were standing together, and he said to me, well, you have to agree that there is a fundamental difference between men and women. So now he's 6 foot tall, right? And he is towering over me. And I'm like looking up at him like this with this crick in my neck. And he said to me, you've got to agree there's a fundamental difference. I thought, tell me about it. Like, for a start, mate, can you just stand back a bit so I can get you into focus? So the whole time, all I'm thinking is physical. He carries prattling on as I'm thinking, obviously prattling. I didn't think much of this guy. So I'm standing there looking up at him as this 6 foot tall guy towers over me. You agree there's a fundamental difference between men and women. And he goes, blah, blah. And after a while, I thought, oh, you don't mean physically. You mean that I shouldn't be in this group because I'm a woman and women should not be allowed in a leadership training group because according to his understanding of the Bible, and the Bible is true, so therefore he started from the space of, it doesn't really matter what your question is because you shouldn't be here, love, because you're a woman and you shouldn't be in leadership. Oh, we're not. The assumption of truth. How often, now that's an extreme example, isn't it? But how many times do we start from that space? Well, actually, we all do it because you've got to start somewhere. Give us a break. How else are you going to have a conversation? You've got to start with something that you think we agree on so you can continue the conversation. But what about in that space before you move on? If you actually find out, do we agree in this? Am I starting from a place that we both agree on? No. And do I understand what the words you're saying? Do we agree on the meaning? So this is what I want you to do in your group. So I'm going to give you a story of assumptions. And what I want you to do, in fact, on the piece of paper you will see that there are 2 light boxes with the 2 questions. So if you can't remember what the questions are, they're written down on here. So I got this story from a book I'm reading by Amy, let me get her name right, Amy Keeney. And it's a book on disability justice in the church, and it's called My Body Is Not a Prayer Request. All right? And in that book, Amy Keeney tells this story of how she goes into this was actually in a church, and someone came up to her and said, I've got a word from God for you. Can I pray for you to be healed? Right? Now, Amy is in a wheelchair. She is disabled. Can I pray for you to be healed? And Amy said, no. Now, what I want you to do in your groups is to work out the two sides. What were the assumptions that the person coming forward saying, I want to pray for you? What were the assumptions in that space? And why do you think Amy said no? Are we okay? Everyone's looking at me like, oh no, I thought she was just going to talk at us. How are we doing? Can we start sharing back? All right. Let's have some. Can you nominate a spokesperson? Now, as it goes round from each table, so a spokesperson from each table, and as it goes round, you're going to think, oh, they took our idea, but I'm sure there's a few ideas in there. But if you're the last table, in fact, if you want to like not be put on the spot, you'd all want to go first. So who wants to go first? John, tell me.
Well, that way all our answers are the first one which start.
So we've got two responses, haven't we? We've got the person who's the prayer, and we've got Amy.
Okay, well, I didn't assume that the person that was praying was a female, but I have inside information to say that she is.
She was female, yeah, in that story.
Wanted to pray because of disability.
Yeah.
God's request. Really?
Really? Someone else picked up on that.
And why did we write that?
Move on to the next one then.
Not whole.
Yes, that Amy was talking.
Yeah. This idea. My writing's not very good at the moment. Sorry, guys. Amy, I'll make more effort. Amy is broken. Cool. Other tables, something else to add?
I wrote the assumption made by the lady offering the prayer now. She assumed that Amy wanted or needed to be prayed for.
Mm-hmm.
And she assumed he's another disabled person who wants to be healed.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And from Amy's, she's only just rolled in there. So and she's assumed as soon as I walk in, it's more about my disability than me. So
yeah. All you see is disability.
And we talked about whether there was a pre-existing relationship or not, because that might very much then vary.
Yeah.
Like if it's someone you trusted and have known for 10 years or whatever and have a relationship with, you might have a much better sense about the appropriateness or not of that offer of prayer than someone that you don't know.
Yeah.
Who's just walked in or off the street or whatever.
She wasn't
Two different contexts.
Yeah. That's really true, isn't it? So, and I think in part the way that Amy was like, no, sort of does illustrate that lack of relationship of like, hello, who are you and what's your name kind of thing. So, what else? Anyone else?
Just on that, so she felt like she wasn't given a choice, so she had to say no to empower herself in that situation.
Why can't I spell tonight? It's because I'm doing it on the board and you're all watching. What about this table?
I would
16 past that was mentioned, but we see the brokenness of the wheelchair, whereas for Amy herself, she could have already reached wholeness with God in that matter, and it might have taken her a lifetime, many years to get to that point, and then she thrown back into the place. And then Jesus' example was, what do you want me to do for you?
Yeah. Nice one. Did you hear that? Yeah. So,
You do it, Adam.
so Jesus said,
He's got a PhD, yeah.
I googled
Pictures of the grandkids.
Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? I think there's this assumption, isn't there, that we heard from the person who came forward in that space of, I know what you need. But I think also, I think sometimes we need to feel like we're doing something. We've talked about this before when we talked about suffering, didn't we? We talked about the fact that we step into situations because we think we've got to answer, we've got to fix, we've got to, well, hang on a minute. That's your assumption. What about the space that Amy was in, where she's like, I'm whole already, thank you. I don't need to be fixed. I'm not broken. I'm not in that space. But I think the thing that really stands out in that is that space of the relationship, isn't it? Like there's no coming in, like no conversation there, just a monologue. It's one-sided opinion that's being given on the assumption this course is exactly what you want, and then they're going off onto what they're going to do next without ever finding out where the person was at in that space. Okay.
So Julie, if you have those, you do hear stories sometimes of stranger encounters that are godly. I mean, I guess Philip and the Ethiopian. I guess I have heard from time to time other stories of someone sort of feeling, maybe it's the attitude in which you approach that, but that it's not ever, I guess I've heard of stories where someone has said, I have a sense that I should tell you this, or I should give you this, or I should give you this money, or I should do this, or I should do that. And it is godly. So
I think in that space, if you're going to give someone money, then go for it, because you can't do any harm. Yeah. If I'm just going to be out to bless you and I'm going to buy you a coffee, I'm going to give you money. If you want to give me money, I'm up for that. Yeah. This is a real blessing, isn't it? It's a very different thing when you come in and you say to someone, "This is what I'm going to tell you," and I think, like some of you already know, that it is the sort of thing I can do. I can know stuff and think. And in my younger days, I made a lot of mistakes going up to people and just saying to them whatever it was I felt that God was saying. Sometimes it was God, sometimes it was me. I made a lot of mistakes because just because I know something doesn't mean I'm supposed to be like, because I might not know it at all. And I also might. So in that space, that woman going up and saying, I want to pray for you. Oh, it must be for healing because you're disabled. What if she just went up and said, oh, hi, how you going? Hey, I'd really like to be praying for you. What is it you would like me to pray for? In that same space of like, Jesus, what is it I can do for you? So I think there's a lot more humility needed in us. So, how would you know if you've made the wrong assumption in a conversation, in that space? How would you know? Body language? Yeah. Or they say no. So, shut down. A lot of times we don't know though, do we? Because we've just gone blithely on, chatting on in our own, and got no idea. And the reason is because before we even start any of this, probably need to describe what we think a conversation is. Yeah? So what would we say? Do you need to do that in groups? Would you like to just 2 seconds to talk to each other? How would you describe a conversation? Go.
It's too early.
Too early. Oh, I like that.
Not at the same time.
You can try. I don't think it'll get very far.
You can have a conversation with me and just ignore it. You're still having a conversation.
That's not a conversation.
It's not a conversation.
Monologue.
Well, it's actually the other way around.
It's a monologue.
Conversations with myself.
It's a good point though, like you could just be both like so determined to get your points across that you keep talking at each other, but it's not actually listening, you know, like hearing, but not like listening. Yeah.
The whole thing's
All right, we got some answers.
Yes.
What are we going to call a conversation, a dialogue? Yeah? We're going to talk about that in a minute, so I'll keep that one on the back burner. How would you define a conversation?
Sharing information.
Yep. Like this word of sharing. Yep, what else?
talking and listening
Oh, love it. Talking
and actually listening. Not
and
Active.
actually listening.
Active listening.
Active.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
ACT.
Active listening. What else?
Good social
Interaction.
Oh, like it. Kind of getting the idea?
Can have emotion, but it may not.
Yep. So we've got here emotion. It's a two-way for a conversation to really be a conversation. It's pretty much got to be two-way. Yeah? My poor old granddad, when he exploded in the chair to Daniel's statement, that was not a conversation. That was a monologue.
We had a conversation afterwards. Oh, actually, it was a monologue.
But you came out wiser.
Came out a whole lot wiser.
My actual statement was... Yes. My statement...
No, we're not going there. Right, I'm taking it back. Let me just tell you about one unsafe conversation.
Was, Julie told me not to say, and then I said the three things, and he then went...
What I actually said was, no. Right, listen, one unsafe conversation that I find in this space and this idea of conversation being two-way. One of the unsafe conversations that I find is when people speak for me. Now, I'm not talking about people talking about me because that's a whole nother issue. I'm speaking about that space where people talk for me. Yeah? So let me give you an example. When I was doing the PhD research, I had a group that was meeting over here that was having a conversation together about gays and lesbians' experiences in church and being in church. So there's a group over there, and I wanted to go and join the conversation. They wouldn't let me because apparently my theology is too liberal and I'm not allowed to be a part of the conversation. So then I went to this group over here who were having a conversation about gays and lesbians' experiences in church, and they wouldn't let me come because apparently my theology is way too conservative and I couldn't possibly be a part of the group and being of any help. It was the same week. Like, I'm not allowed to talk there, I'm not allowed to talk there because they leaders spoke for me, and they used my story. They used what I was doing in the PhD to tell their group why I could not be a part of it. And this group over here, like, it's a bit funny.
Is that
But it's really... Huh? I am many things, love. I don't know anyone's ever called me that. So, it was that space where the leaders spoke for me and no one spoke to me. And all my rights to tell my own story of what I was doing the PhD and everything else, all taken away from me. Because everyone else is telling it and I'm not allowed to. Now, okay, it's an extreme example and I can't do it on purpose, but don't we do that to people? Don't we just, don't know about letting them talk. They might be, well, who knows what they'll say. Yeah? Just that space. So if we're talking about in this space here of safe conversations, what would a safe conversation look like in the safe centre? Isn't part of our safe conversation then about giving people the right to speak in their own voice and tell their own stories? Be able to have their own opinions and say what they think? Maybe?
No.
No, obviously not. Everyone's sitting there going, I don't know how I'm supposed to answer. So, own voice, own story.
There's immense risk.
I want to put that in one of your questions because it is risky, isn't it? If you ask someone what they really think, they might tell you.
And their experiences might shape how they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But equally, I mean, in a church, we've had this before, but in a church where you've got a certain party line, or in a, say, a political party, or in anything where there's a core of people who are on a journey together, to actually have somebody come in and say, hang on a minute, is usually they're shut down.
Yeah.
One way or the other, or nudged out.
Which is why we're creating this space here at the Safe Centre, aren't we? Because it's a space where we can be all sorts, where we can talk about this stuff and not have to do this thing of like, well, I'm not sure about letting you speak. Being able to... And don't forget, we're back now in a space at the moment. We are talking about you and I having a conversation. Can we not look at this in light of being a generous people who are able to listen, who's someone whose life experiences or whose perspective is so different from our own? Can we make it a safe conversation for them and for us by being able to sit in that space and go, it's just different. I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to disagree with you. But right now, I've done an awesome job of making this a safe conversation where you can own your own voice and tell me your story in your way.
Can I go back to the story of Amy? Because when I was reading the book,
I'm only halfway through.
well, one of the things that got me is that normally I would say about the lady who wanted to pray for her, she meant well. But Amy wasn't having that at all. She felt like, for a start, in terms of who she is as a person, maybe she should have been praying for the other person because the other person needed prayer. And she got very assertive. And as I'm listening to her tell her story in her voice, it's a criticism of how I heard the story.
Yeah.
And she's very good at this, bringing that up and confronting you with it. And so sometimes when a person has their own story in their own voice, it is actually aggressive in the sense of its impact on you. It can't just be, oh, I'm hearing you. It's, I'm hearing you, so I need to change.
See, this is actually, let's get on to that because you're exactly right. It is this space of then this space of the conversation with a person Because you're right, if someone is talking about the thing in their own space, part of the reason these two groups did not want me to speak is because they didn't know what I was going to say. And they were a bit unsure whether what I would say would upset people in their group. Okay? Reasonable or not. I mean, you could just have conversation with me and tell me what topics we're not talking about. But anyway, rather than just excluding me, but hey-ho, you know. But there is a space, isn't it? But when someone tells you a story, you're absolutely right about the fact they can be quite aggressive in the way they tell it. Can be quite, and if it cuts across some of your own spaces or you feel a bit uncomfortable in that space, you can feel that thing of wanting to respond even aggressively yourself. So I think it's a very good point. It's okay. When it's okay to, you know.
I like the side of that, so the other party might just not be there yet. So, as we all have Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on our doors, they did to me one day, and I said, and they offered whatever they were offering. So I said, sure, can I pray for you? That made them run very fast. But
it's reciprocal.
God's going to come down and take you out of all of your security. I just meant, this is not easy work that you're doing, and you're doing so wholeheartedly.
One of the guys one of the guys who I have loved to learn from is a guy called Martin Buber. He is Jewish and he is an expert in how you talk to one another. It's all of his research. I've just loved what he had to say. And he said, most of what we call dialogue, most of what we call a two-way conversation is actually a monologue of just one person speaking, the other one just, trying to work out all the assumptions or being, with the assumption. We don't have that many conversations with people. But what he did say is there's two ways you can structure a conversation. Someone said about the fact that sometimes our conversation is factual. They're just things that we need to tell one another, okay? There's different ways we can structure a conversation. But one of the things that he talks about is that conversations can either be I and it or I and thou. So an I and it conversation is when you're having a conversation on a topic or a subject, it. Yeah? We're talking about something. And it's one of her spaces, the I-it conversations. There's often a lot of opinions that come into that space when you talk about a subject, isn't there? I think this is what should happen, that's what it should be, all of this sort of stuff. And what Martin Buber says, is often when you have I-it conversations are monologues. They're just all your opinions going backwards and forwards. So let me give you an example. I was in my 20s and I was going for hospital tests because I didn't know whether or not I could have children. And so that was a really difficult time for me. And so I was sitting with a group of my friends and I said to them, they're saying I might never be able to have kids naturally, and immediately this group, all my friends, they started talking about it. And they started talking about the friends they had who'd had IVF and it had worked. And they started talking about the miracle babies that they'd known, where IVF didn't work and then they still ended up with a baby, or you need to get so-and-so to pray for you because that give you a miracle baby. And then they started talking about, there's all the ways, the option of adoption, and they were having a whale of a time. And me? I was dying with every one of their opinions on the subject. Until in the end, I just was so angry. And I just yelled out at them, okay, so let me just get this straight. Well, you're all sitting there with your children. You want to give me opinions on what's going to happen. I was so angry. Yeah? Well, what do we think about that? Do you think I had a right? Like, what went wrong in that situation? But back really pretty much in this space again, where even, these were my friends, okay? I knew it was like, oh, I've got a book for you. Tell you where you can stick your book, you know? You're not in that space. And so up here, they had they had all their opinions, and it was an I-it. They talked about the subject. And what they did not do was see the person, right? And so Buber says, if you have an I-it, they come up with some great ideas. Yeah? They had awesome ways that were going to help me, yeah? As they talked about it. It was a monologue, because I wasn't in that conversation. And it certainly wasn't helping me. And so what Martin Buber says is, we do that a lot. How about we don't? How about when we have conversations with people, it is I and thou, you. I'm getting to talk to you. I want to know about you. And so in that situation with my friends, like someone say, oh, Gilly, how are you feeling about that? Do you even want to talk about this? No, actually, I don't. Yeah? I'm not ready to even talk about this, you know. Probably poked around by a whole load of doctors. I don't need it from you lot as well. Was that too much detail? You know, they are no...
Don't you think that they've brought all that up because it's their coping mechanism for your problem?
Very good. Give John a... It's brilliant. It is what we do. And we're back to that thing again, and particularly in the space of suffering, yeah? But there's a whole load of places that we do this in where we use it as a coping mechanism because we don't know what to say. Well,
I remember that we had that even here. I mean, we're going back quite a few years, but when Hassan came to the church, some of you may or may not know Hassan, he was a refugee, he came on a boat. And I remember the conversations that were going around at the time because of the boat people and everything else. And when the conversation was always about, they've got to stop the boats, they've got to do whatever, they mustn't allow these people to come in and take our jobs and take... and then as soon as you mentioned, hang on, Hassan is one of those people, it was, oh, no, I didn't mean that him, it wasn't that. That actually is exactly what you mean. And I think that's the difference between the issue and a person.
Because when you put it as Buber says, Martin Buber says, if you put it as I and thou, yeah, you're making it person-centred. And suddenly it's all about that person. Because you don't talk about subjects in the same way. So, supposing the subject's addiction, right, and everyone's talking about it, but your sister is addicted, or your dad's, or your best friend, or... You don't talk about it in the same way, do you? Because this is real people. You're talking about someone that I love here, with your opinions, yeah? We treat it so differently. And what Buber says is, if we're going to have safe conversations, if we're going to make sure that people are being listened to, they're talking and listening, that what we need to do is make sure that in our minds, what we're doing is having a conversation with a person that we value, where we're having a conversation with someone that says, I empathise with you, I'm listening to what you are saying, not just assuming, I'm listening to what you're saying.
Also with, not about.
Brilliant. With and not about. Actually, we should have that one. Okay. With and not about. It makes a whole lot. Emphasise, I'm engaging with your unique perspective. It's not the same perspective as I've got, and I may not even agree with it, but it's your perspective. And because I love and value you, I will listen to your perspective. It's really pretty simple, really, isn't it? Except when you try and do it. I value all your social and cultural, all the things that have made you and brought you to this place. I'm going to value those things. They're going to be so different from what I've been through. It's going to come out differently in the way you express yourself or things you try and explain. But because I value you, I'm going to value everything that got you here in your journey. So, okay, what about if, as a safe centre, we say that to make this a space for safe conversations, we will try to always make the conversation I and thou and not I and it. We won't talk about subjects, we'll talk with people. Yeah? Now, that is going to be a bit difficult because probably in the next teaching session, Stephen will be given a topic to go on with, yeah? So, but we're talking here about one-on-one conversations with people that we're trying to make safe. So, Martin Buber said, when we encounter another individual truly as a person, not as an object for use, we become fully human. It changes us when we start treating people like we really do value them as people. When we start having I and thou conversations, we become fully human. We become, this idea. What can I do for you? Kind of it. That's the thing that makes us fully human. And the thing is, in that space, you're not going to agree with everything that people will come into the Safe Centre say, or everything that I'm saying today. It doesn't mean you're going to agree with me, right? You might agree or you might disagree. It's not about that. It's about the fact that we're having a conversation. And it's the fact that you're just listening to that perspective. You don't have to agree or disagree. It's quite polarising at the moment, isn't it? If someone makes a statement and immediately everyone comes, particularly in social media sites and spaces, we do this thing where we jump on and go, I don't agree with that. Who cares what you agree? Rob?
I just thinking whether it's in that someone weekend or on Good Friday, I can go into a rescue mode. So someone says something, they might disagree. But I was just thinking when I worked as a high school chaplain, I don't know how many times my students, they come in, they tell me a story, I believe them, but without thinking, I start to go into trying how I can problem solve what I need to rescue. And as I started to battle and talk, I got pulled up so many times by the students. They said, please, no, I don't want you to try and solve. I just want somewhere safe where I can share and someone to listen. That's what I've come here for. And then I had to learn that lesson over and over again. So it's a bit of a sort of...
But I think it's incredibly relevant because if you think about what we are doing here at the Safe Centre, we are trying to help people, aren't we? We are trying to be a resource for our community. You come here, we'll try and find someone who'll help you. Yeah? So that is part of our sort of remit. But I think if we have that mentality that every person who comes through the door, we're their rescuer, and we've got to have the answer, then again, we're back in the wrong space.
But it's also, even what you said earlier, it's listening to what they think their need is, not what we may see somebody who is in financial difficulty, for argument's sake, and we think, okay, they've got to see a financial counsellor, but perhaps the actual issue is the fact that they're in a domestic abuse situation, and so they don't have the finances because their partner is controlling the finances, and therefore, and we go into the thing without having listened, without having engaged with the person. So I think there is a thing that we do want to help people, but it is on their agenda, not on
their terms.
Their terms.
It's always good to say, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help? And they might say no.
See, so we talk about this easily, don't we, when we're in this space of one-on-one conversations with people and trying to help them think. where we struggle is when we disagree with someone fundamentally over something, right? And then suddenly it's like, forget all of this, right? We're back to I, it, and I am definitely going to tell you. Here's how you know whether or not you've had an I, it conversation. This was my revelation. So if I'm wrong, don't blame Martin Buber, right? Because this was my revelation.
Yeah, but you're now a doctor, so it's...
I'm not yet, I haven't got the admin paper yet, but I will be. So here's what I think. I, it conversations are where you come out of the conversation and you think to yourself, what I should have said was blah, blah, blah. That would have nailed them. Yeah? Yeah. It's a completely different reason for having the conversation if you're just trying to make your point. And I think in some of these, when we get onto some of this thing of clashing values, of hard conversations, all of this sort of stuff, I think that's our problem, isn't it? We want to make sure we've made the point. I've made a good argument and I've made that point. That's an I-it conversation. How do you know whether you have had a I and thou conversation? Well, you know that person better and they know you better. So it's not just about the fact that you found out about them. They also know something about you and you've shared something in that space that is of value. So it's not just that you know you disagree over something, but actually they know something about who you are as a person and you know something about them. So.
Julie, do you think it comes back to that sense also of just seeing others as having intrinsic worth in and of themselves, not around anything else in their world, just as people, that they have intrinsic worth? And if you take that position of every other person has intrinsic worth, even when it's really hard, and there are times when it is really challenging, because people behave really badly sometimes. But to think even in that space, that's when the rubber hits the road.
At the moment, we are just laying one foundation because I am aware of the fact that in this space when we're trying to look and value a person, we're in conversation, everything else, what I just want to emphasise, just a little sideline here, I am trying to do this, but I will not let people abuse me, right? It's very different. This is a two-way conversation, right? And so if I come into that space, it doesn't mean that I stop being open and generous and keeping my values. But if they come in and they're just abusive, they're crossing the line with me, they don't value me, they are telling me what I should and shouldn't do, they've got a monologue. Do you remember that 6-foot guy towering over me? I am way more likely now to say, hey mate, do you want to just stand back? You know, like, for us, you know, but it's, well, we'll talk about power in a minute. But there is that thing I do want to say in that space. We are talking about two-way conversations. Yeah, does not mean that I stand up for abuse. When I was a young pastor, I thought that the people in, this was in my first church, I thought the people in the church had the right to speak to me however they needed to because, you know, I was a pastor and I was there for them. God bless her. We had this one woman, and whenever she would come in and she'd ask me for coffee, I knew I was going to get it. Man, she would go for me. So she came in this one time. Before they let her into the office, the kids had left from Sunday a teddy. I grabbed the teddy, put the teddy in front of me, put my arms around this teddy, pulled it in. I went, okay, let her in. What does that say about the conversation, right? And I sat there and I looked at this teddy and I thought, I'm doing this job wrong. I'm not going to let people abuse me because because it's not, I'm not an it, yeah? You can just yell at or you can dump all your stuff on. I and thou, we value each other. We don't work in a space of abuse. So, yeah. So basically, if you're abusive, you're out. Because
is that also coming from the point and the looking, some people aren't trying to be abusive they're coming from a place of abuse. So they're actually defensive.
It's really,
Understanding the difference.
yeah, it is really difficult to sort of I think the way that I would put it is, if at any point you're feeling like this is an unsafe conversation for me, it's totally reasonable to say to someone, do you know what? I don't think I can talk about this anymore. So I just don't feel safe anymore in this. Yeah, it's reasonable because it's two-way. Yeah, and then. So it might be that they're like, but I really want to talk about this. Okay, I can't do this now. We need to find a different way. Because we're doing an I and thou conversation, and I'm valuable too in this way. Any questions? So we're getting that there is a difference. We're not talking about allowing people to walk all over us. I and thou is the thing of I value you, you value me. We're going to have this as one of our foundations for the Safe Centre. Okay, here's your next. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, don't say sorry, I didn't hear. And she apologises again.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's ever a space for a discussion around an it. Like, can you ever just start off with an I and thou, say, and kind of get where each other are at, and when you're discussing an issue together, like, I don't know.
I still find if I am talking about it, okay, talking about something, if you frame it around the fact that we are in relationship, and the most important thing in this conversation is that I keep my relationship with you. I think the problem when we have I-it conversations is that we want to win our argument, or we're scared we might lose ground, or we might end up agreeing in something that we don't. And
I think what the meaning is, what if you and I say have a conversation about immigration?
Yes, but what I'm saying is, in that space, if you and I were having a conversation, the most important thing to me is that I keep relationship with you.
Neither of us, generally that's going to be fairly safe, because neither of us, although we are both immigrants, but we immigrate.
Came in together, we're both immigrants.
But I mean, obviously you say, but I would say it's sort of a dangerous place, because without the person's perspective or the person's story, you actually build up like the person's confirming, and you agree together, and actually it reinforces your prejudices or your whatever if you don't at an early stage bring in the people or the persons who are being impacted by your decision. And it will come out in your conversation with other people, because you're trying to wrestle it through and work it out. And you actually come to a point out here, quite a strong place, if you haven't included the person at the beginning.
So definitely, and what I would say is that next week we're going to be talking about this. Where's my pen? We're going to be talking. I haven't done a good job on that one, have I? We're going to be talking about this thing, which is called Theory U, and it's how you have these conversations over it. But what I want to say in that space is, if you're having a conversation with someone and you agree, it's going to be fine, yeah, because you both agree and you're just talking about it. But like Daniel said, you're not going to know another perspective because they agree with you. So all you're going to do is come out of your little, even though it's two of you, it's still a bit of a monologue, isn't it? Because you just agreed together. So isn't that nice? If you're having a conversation with someone over it, okay, and there's like this difference of opinion. So in that space, what becomes really important is that you remember the most important thing to me is I and thou, not that we agree or that we I make you see my point of view. What is most important is that I keep this relationship with you. So Daniel and I did this test. It was on our marriage, and this question. We were supposed to be the ones helping the young people get married, who were getting married. Okay, and Daniel and I did the test, and there was this question. I can't remember what it was. And we so disagreed with each other over it, and so Daniel and I having this little fight together, while the couple who were getting married were all lovey-dovey and getting on great. Daniel and I having this disagreement over it. And I said to Daniel, what do we do about this? How can we teach people if you and I don't agree? And he said, we do what we always do. He says, sometimes you win and sometimes I win, and we're never going to agree on this. I thought, oh yeah, that's what we do. And we carried on. Isn't that the reality of our lives in that space of discussion? Yeah? Sometimes we don't agree, but we're still married. We are. Look, I've got another question for you. You're going to like this one, right? So, how are we doing? I don't even know what time it is. All right, I've got a question for you, right? What do you need? We've been talking about this for a while. So, what do you need to have a safe conversation? All right, let's work this out on the table. I'm going to give you there's a couple of things that, sort of think about in this space. Supposing I came to you and I said, listen, this is absolutely your job. You've got no way getting out of this, right? I need you to go up to so-and-so and tell them they smell. Right, what I want you to do on your table is write down the things that make you feel like, is that a safe conversation, unsafe conversation? What do we think about that? What are the emotions that you feel if I was to say to you, it is your job now to go up and tell so-and-so they smell? All right, tell me, you don't have to, you can say no, but have you got a spokesperson for that table? So, yeah. Well, what does that feel like when you put on that sort of, where you have to have, or you're being told, or you feel like you need to have those kinds of conversations? What do you feel? What makes it feel like it's unsafe?
I feel anxious.
Anxious? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else? Anything else?
A fear of rejection.
Uh-huh.
I've actually been on both sides of that conversation.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. But, it happened. It was a thing. And having that conversation said to you, it's terrifying. Because you feel like you failed at something. I didn't even know. I've had conversations with people and they didn't know. So you feel like some people could feel that they were being attacked. It depends on your mental health and all those other factors, I guess. But as loving as someone can come to you with that thing, it's never a pleasant conversation on either side.
The fear of rejection, that they are going to reject you, but also I think it can be more than that, can't it? Because you can actually fear the whole loss of the entire relationship when they're never going to talk to me again. Yeah? So you've not just got your fear of being rejected, you've also got that fear of loss of relationship. Anyone want to add anything else? What did you feel? Yeah?
I suppose depending on your tone of voice, I might think you're joking with me.
Back to these assumptions. Oh yeah, that's really funny. No. Yeah. It's true. So, tone.
If you're in a relationship with someone and then you knew this person just lost their job, their parents had just died, and they had all this other stuff going on, and then you were to come and dress them, the situation they smell wouldn't be particularly sensitive at times. I think it could be, and knowing the background, whether that was particularly important at that time, or whether there's other things.
Yeah, I've had an experience like that when I just started to think, because I was concerned what was happening at work. And she said to me, if you had this conversation with me any earlier, this friendship would have blown up. So what Rob's saying about timing is really very important.
It is about timing, but isn't it something bigger than that? We're back to this thing of I and now. We're back to this thing of I know you and I know your journey. Before I'm saying anything, I know you. Before I start making my assumptions. Supposing it was a true story, right, and I really did come up to you and say, here, go and tell so-and-so that they smell it, it's your job. Wouldn't you be like offended?
Yes.
Right, do it yourself.
I don't know, executives tell senior leadership to do that all the time.
Well, I was...
Shove yourself up on your bootstraps and then you go tell the person they smell.
Yes, I mean, but there is that part though that kind of wants to turn around and say, you do it, mate. You know, so, and the offence that you're doing. It is really difficult, isn't it, to have those conversations, yeah? And so it's like coming, it's sort of in here, just thinking about what it would feel like if you had to have a conversation like that. And the anxiety, what other words? Do we have any other words, anything else? Anyone want to add? But you can get it, right? Okay. Yeah.
At times you have, as possible, you have to talk to staff about stuff. And sometimes it can be this kind of offensive thing. It can be approached in a way that before you get to the point of actually having to tell them that they know this is not good stuff, and they're actually feeling for you having to tell them.
Just so you know, guys, that's a gift. That is a gift, you know. So, there are ways we can do it.
I need to have a tricky conversation with you and I'm feeling really uncomfortable about this. But I think it's really important that you know because it's not fair for you not to know.
But we're back in that space again of like who you're talking to, relationship, journey, all of these things. But what I want to say, sorry, did you want to...
I was just going to say that, go up to them and say, hey, Julie's asked me to tell you something. I can't see it myself.
I'm going to love working with you. So here's the thing, right? You can sort of feel that anxiety, yeah? About so sort of space. All right, here's what I want to say. What if I was to say to you, you have to go up to your boss and tell your boss that they smell?
Got a piece of cake. I wouldn't stop there.
Okay. So, was not quite expecting that answer. Can you see the difference in the power in that conversation? It's one thing to talk to your friend, isn't it, about something. Whole nother thing when you're having to speak to someone who has the power over you. If you have a look on your sheets there, you will see. This I got from a woman called Morel Harrison. She did a whole research on conversation in the Uniting Church in Australia. Outstanding piece of research. And I think I forgot to put the footnote on there, so I'm sorry about that. But she came up with the different ways that you can have a conversation. So you may be thinking that you're trying to have an I and thou conversation, but the power difference between you is such that it isn't. Yeah? Like you going and speaking to your boss about something. Suddenly it's a whole different dynamic. So when you think about the safe centre, right, but you may not feel like this is the case, but I'm just telling you, you lot have the power, yeah? Because you're here, week in, week out, you've got say over spaces, you've got, your opinions matter because, you know, you get to vote and speak into this space. You've got a whole load of power, right? That people who are coming into the safe centre, whether they come in as visitors or they maybe using the building in whatever way, it's a different dynamic, isn't it? Yeah? And what we have to remember in our conversation is that we can have these power relationships and not even realise it. So we spoke about one of those power relationships already in the fact that we can act in the mode of a rescuer. Yeah, I've got the power, I've got the answers, I just need to come and rescue you with my conversation, with my thing that I do for you. That's a power, a type of power. But she's got these 4 types of power, and the first one is power over. That's the warrior model, or that's that guy sort of powering over me, literally, but in that space of like, I'm me man, me fire, you know, this warrior, power over the conversation, power over another person. There's within that, so you probably, have a think about it, you've probably known people who work in that kind of power over mode. Do you know people like that? Oh, you must do. Yeah, don't you just? They're normally in your family. You know, so God bless them. But the other part in there is the power over is actually parental mode as well. So, which is totally reasonable with your kids, yeah? You have the power over them because you're the parent and you know best. But one of the problems is in a conversation with adults is that people could come in or people are having a conversation with you and you in your really lovely rescuer parent mode, you know the answer, can have power over them and their choices because you're trying to protect them and you're trying to love them as a parent would. We're not parents, yeah? We're friends. We've got to look at that in our conversation, particularly for people who are coming into the safe centre. We don't act as parents over them. So bureaucratic, in some ways we can't get away from that, so I shouldn't have put that one in. Because there's some things that are just bureaucratic. We have the power over some, and some of those spaces of power we just have to have, which gets to do with health and safety and the fact that we won't allow abusive behaviour on the property or to any of the stuff. Yeah, they're just choices. So sometimes, yeah, in our conversations we have to act in this. But if you can keep it in that bureaucratic level, this is a thing for all of us to be safe. These are our rules. Yeah, that's very different from acting like you're the parent who knows best in the conversation. Can you see a difference in that? No? It's a bit, everyone looks a bit blank. You're getting tired. Power with the person or the institution. So that's the thing of, I've got the power because believe it or not, I am a pastor here. Yeah, so I'm the pastor, I've got the title, the power's with me. Yeah? Yeah, right, dream on, Julie. So it's that kind of thing. Power within, that's where you can get people to do what you want because you're kind of charismatic and kind of got a whole load of energy and everything. And, you know, you may know people in this church who are like that, who in their enthusiasm drag you into the teams that you're on. Okay, because there's like this charismatic power that they have within them, okay? And you just need to be aware of it. And again, when we talk about safe conversations, so Stephen this morning called me a force of nature, and I'm not quite sure if he means that as a blessing or a curse. Yeah? It can be both. So in our conversations, just looking at that space and thinking, okay, are we just overpowering people, or is it our charismatic personality that's carrying them away? Honestly, you see a lot in churches, don't you? The latest speaker on the internet. I'm sorry, it is. Oh, sorry. Okay, and power between the people seeks mutuality. That's what we want to get in our conversations here. That we try and be aware that we do have the power. If you belong to this safe centre, if you belong in Christie's Beach Baptist Church, you see this as your home, you've got a lot of power. So let's just think about that in that space of the conversation. That people who are coming in or are new in this space, they don't have the same power. So then when it comes to a conversation, who has the right to the opinion? Well, the people with the power. And we just need to be aware of that to try and make it safe. Okay? Sorry. Cool. So, each table, this is like 1 minute and then you can all go home, right? Each table. If the safe centre could be known for one thing in the way it conducts its conversation, in light of everything we've been talking about tonight, but just one thing. If people in the Safe Centre who work here, visitors, community members, everyone saying, they could say one thing. Do you know what? The Safe Centre, this is what they're known for in the way they have their conversations, in the way that they talk about things, right? What would you have us be known for? Is that a clear question? Not really. One thing. Have you decided on something? Do you need another minute?
I like value.
No?
No. She wants one word, but you can throw it anyway.
All right. Do you reckon you've got something?
Yep.
Well, I can leave you to talk, or you can give your answers and go home.
Value.
Oh yeah, okay. Right, which table wants to go first?
Value.
Value. The safe centre is, or the safe centre values people.
Care.
Actually, values all sorts of people.
Just turn down one word into 5.
He said coffee, value.
Kind of with that. But if we are going to be a church of all sorts, or a safe centre that's of all sorts, that means we're all sorts, right?
Except today.
So, yeah, so value. I don't know if it's me on the computer or what. Values, all sorts of people. Next, acceptance, love it.
Yeah, I like that one too. Equal as well.
And again, if you think in this area of conversation, right, how will people know that they were accepted? Because of the way you had a conversation with them. Listen, we're going to do a big thing on listening next week. It's a whole thing, okay? But acceptance.
We're going to call it listening centre.
Ooh.
Other people be heard. They listen to you or heard.
Mm-hmm. Listening centre. Oops, with me. Oh. And
Change all the signs.
Have a whole lot of ears up there. Pictures of ears.
so, yeah, Daniel's going to love you to change everything.
I said wholesome. They left feeling better than before.
Mm-hmm. If I got every table, I've missed someone. Oh, Daniel.
One we get word up.
Well, you can't do anything without mentioning John 17 because it is The Bible talks about the love that we have for each other. So that's what we're known for, because out of that love, John 17 says that they know that Jesus is real and that he died for them.
It's really just loving people.
That's important, but you've got to be also in control.
In all this space, all right, you're probably sitting there and thinking, wow, 7 years to learn that. But sometimes we can overlook the beep beep obvious, can't we? Yeah? And if we don't lay out our ground rules of what a conversation is going to look like and what we mean by a conversation, the next 2 weeks is like a waste of my time. Yeah? So, but in the next 2 weeks, we will do the rubber hits the road stuff. Okay? So if you want to bring like any of your bulletproof vests or your helmets for safety, no, it's going to be fine.
Teddy bear to hug.
Your teddy bear to hug, you're never going to let me live that down. Safe conversations. We're going to talk about what happens when you are in those spaces and it's a hard conversation. Shall I pray for us? Yeah. Okay. Lord, we have talked a lot tonight, and particularly me, but Lord, we've all of us talked a lot about this. We just want to say thank you so much for putting us together in a space where we can really mesh this stuff out and think this through. But we're asking you, Lord, that this not just be an intellectual exercise. What we are looking for out of this conversation that we're having tonight is that we will define our values and who we are as a safe centre. And so what I'm asking, Lord, is as this sits with us, people watch it online, sharing their questions, their thoughts, that, Lord, we will really be able to say, Lord, this is what we will be known for, and it will become part of our DNA. And all God's people said, Amen. I always feel like I need to do the benediction. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.